In your free response section of your AP test, there'll be two sections, 40 multiple choice, and then 4 free response questions. And your free response questions are very typically going to be in multiple parts, and they will usually relate to each other. So the second part and the third part, this is only 2 parts, will often refer to each other, and they will often be inside of a class that has some functions or properties, some private variables that you're supposed to use, and so you'll have to look at their comments to understand. So the first thing that I do, I'll glance very quickly at some of the body text here, but that'll be usually giving examples of how things will operate. The first thing that I look through is comparing the Javadoc comment from the one and the second or the third part. And typically from looking just at the Javadoc comment from one method to the other, I can get a rough idea what this problem is all about. You know, what sort of property that they're going to be testing us on. And I'll find out very, very quickly that'll be adding and taking off methods from an array list. And once I understand the context of, okay, what are they trying to test me on here, it'll help me better understand the details of the question. So they really want us to use these 3 methods, string methods, and not really anything else. We're going to be using a lot of array lists from the look of it. Okay, so this first one, they're going to give us original starting text where we start cutting and where we stop cutting, and the thing that we're going to be replacing. So we'll cut out what's in between here and insert that instead. So replace 1, and so it sort of explains that number of characters to be replaced. So this plus that is the starting point. Okay, so we'll look back over that in a second, and then now let's look at what replace all is going to be. Alright, so replace all is simply going to set it up to call part A replace 1, and possibly do it more than once. So for as long as, so it'd probably be a while loop. So as long as we see the pattern in that, we will return, we'll cut that out and we'll replace it with a B, and then cut out the second A, and replace it with another B, and that's how we get that. So it'll be sort of a loop. As long as we find our target inside this, then we should keep on running replace 1. And we'll have to set up those target locations. And then the undo replace all will just reverse this. And so we'll need to, before we start messing around with the original text that comes in the method's parameters, we'll have to back it up into this save text array, so that if we wanted to undo it, then we could restore that. So we'll take a closer look at that, but now I understand the basic idea, and so now let's look closer at the problems and how we actually start punching this out. So you asked this question about if this was a good starting point, and so you started setting up a loop. And I don't think we're going to need a loop. I think this is primarily going to be an issue of substring. So let's imagine that we got replace 1 for apple, and this is the string for apple, and then we got 1, 3, C. So what that means, and we can infer this from the instructions here, that the first, that I is where we start the replacement, and so that will start to get cut there, and how many characters we are going to replace, and the sub is what we're going to replace that with. So that will start at 1, so that means we're going to start cutting here, and then we'll cut for 3 letters. So this is 1, 2, and 3, so we're going to cut this out as well. And so, and we're going to replace this with C. So our intended outcome is going to be ACE. So ACE, because these three letters, starting from letter 1, is going to be replaced with this content C. So this is the method call. In the method header over here, we see the variable being called text, and so we can then the whole part A can be done in a single line of code. You can break it up and make it perhaps easier to chunk it and figure it out. But the first thing that we need to do is return two substrings. We need to I guess we need to return the concatenation or the addition of three strings. We need to do whatever is before, whatever is going to, and we'll need to figure out it starts at 0 and goes up to that. And then we'll need to add in the string that we're inserting. And then we'll need to go from this plus this. So that's 1 plus 3 is 4. So that's what we're going to pick up here and go on to the end. So we need to return a text.substring. And you need to figure that out, plus another thing, plus whatever our substitute is. So another variable, and then plus, you also figure out what variable that is. That should be easy enough. And then the other text.substring. So you'll need to figure out what parameters you put into this, what variable goes there, and then you'll at the end here, you'll need to put another text substring and figure out what parameters you go there. That should only need one parameter, where this would probably needs a start and a stop. So I hope that makes sense. Give that a try and let me know if you have any questions. So for replace all, I think we'll just need to make sure. We can just use index of, and so we'll set up a while loop as long as index of what we're trying to replace, what we're trying to target is in the text. We'll keep running that loop. So let's get programming. So this is pretty easy because what we do is, first of all, we know that we have to first back up text into save text. So, and it's already been instantiated, so we don't need to make it. It's a private variable. They've given that to us already, and so it is instantiated and ready to go. So we can just say save text. We can insert it in a couple different ways. We could always add it in the end, or we could always insert it in the beginning. So if we wanted to always add it in the first position and move everything else down, that could be done like that, just text. And so now right away, the first thing that we do when we replace all is we take the string and we add it to the save text. And that way, if the save text.size is greater than 1, we have something here. I keep writing things in Python. If it's greater than 1 or equal to 1, then or just greater than 0, then we could always just return the last one. Return save text dot get at 0. So you can get that the 0 element, and that'll always be the most recent, because whenever we do that, we always insert it at 0. But if I just did add text, then I could get size -1. Save text at size -1. So this would be the last item, and this is always inserting it at the end. So you can do either way. And then if there is nothing here, then I'll return null. And so if there is something in my list, I'll get the last item. If not, or I could put an else here, but this is essentially an else already. So I'll return the last item if I'm inserting the most recent one at the end. You can flip it around too. Okay, so then I'm going to want to set up a while loop. And so that'll be it. Everything that'll happen will be in the while loop. And in the midst of the while loop, I'll need to target. I need to figure out the parameters in order to call replace one. So call replace one. And so we'll need to figure out the params in order to call replace one. Well, the text will be text. So we know that first variable, and we know sub, but the I and n. So I and n, those variables, where do we start and where do we stop, are going to be based on where we find this target inside our larger body. And so we're going to use index of in order to figure out that, and we're going to use the length of what we're replacing to figure out how long that we stretch it out. All right, so that should give you guys plenty of context to get this started. If you have any questions, by all means, let me know.